The Nile River was the lifeline of ancient Egypt. The civilization rose and fell on its monsoonal tides, which brought rich silts for farming down the river. But this powerful waterway was known to rise too high for the Egyptian people 7,000 years ago. To overcome this, they prepared simple walls from reeds, filled with soil and rocks to shore up a failing bank, nudging the flow of the mighty Nile where it would benefit these ancient people the most. The retaining walls date back to ancient Egypt, where they were used to harness the great power of the Nile River.
This construction technique used for such walls is called gabion walls. The word comes from the Italian gabion or big cage, and has its roots in Latin, from the word cavia meaning cage. Gabion blocks are commonly used today when swift construction of earthworks, retaining walls, and even military emplacements are required.
Retaining walls around the world. An ancient community in modern Ireland, Newgrange, Cairn also used retaining walls 5,000 years ago. Also in Old Mesopotamia, evidence shows that they are using retention walls to create pyramid-like structures during those periods. The salient factor in making modern steel gabion cages so effective is that they can be collapsed and carried with ease and once an emplacement is required. They are simply formed into shape and filled with rocks and soil, thus making them an excellent tool for dealing with flash flooding, just as the ancient Egyptians did thousands of years ago. Now let's look at some of the world's greatest retaining walls. First, Caesar's double walls at the Siege of Alesia were a masterpiece of military engineering. Second, the Berlin Wall. When the Berlin Wall was built in 1961, its construction would physically divide the east and west of the city for the next 28 years. It would become a symbol of the Cold War and heavily influenced German culture for many years to come. Third, the mighty walls of Constantinople. The ancient defensive stone walls of Constantinople, currently known as Istanbul, Turkey, have surrounded and defended the city for over 1,500 years. They were originally built when the city was founded as the new capital of the Roman Empire by Emperor Constantine the Great in 330 AD. Fourth, the European Wall of China, the Walls of Ston. The Walls of Ston, in Croatia, are some of the longest of any fortress in the world. Construction began in around 1358 and once completed they would stretch for more than 7 kilometers. Fifth, the Diyarbakir Walls. Built under the reign of Roman Emperor Constantius II in the 3-4th century AD, the Diyarbakir fortress is located in Sur, Turkey. The material for the walls came from an older Roman city of Amida and they are the widest and longest defensive walls in the world after the Great Wall of China. Sixth, Hadrian's Wall. Built to keep tribes of the north out of the Roman province of Britannia, Hadrian's Wall's construction began in 122 AD. The entire fortification ran from the banks of the River Tyne on the North Sea to the Solway Firth on the Irish Sea. 7th, the Aurelian Walls. The Aurelian Walls, built between 271 and 275 AD in Rome, superseded the older original 4th century BC Servian Wall. These impressive defensive structures were built to enclose all 7 hills of Rome, Campus Martius, and parts of the Tiber and the Trastevere district. 8. The Athenian Wall. Stretching over roughly 6 kilometers each, the long walls of Athens protected Athenians' access to their ports of Piraeus and Phalerum during times of siege. They were built over several phases, with the first phase completed in the 5th century BC in response to Xerxes' invasion of 479 BC. 9. The Great Wall of China. One of the medieval wonders of the world, the Great Wall of China runs, roughly, east to west across the historical northern border of China. It officially runs for around 21,196 kilometers or 13,171 miles, with the best preserved and maintained section from the Ming Dynasty extending for just over 8,850 kilometers of that total. 10. The Belfast Peace Lines. In an attempt to keep the peace, British officials built a series of separation barriers across Northern Ireland to keep Republican Catholic and Loyalist Unionist Protestant communities apart. The first of these walls was built in 1969, with as many as 59 being built as of 2017. 11. The Moscow Kremlin Walls. The Moscow Kremlin, simply the Kremlin, is a fortified complex in the heart of the Russian city of Moscow. The original defenses built by Yuri Dolgoruki were destroyed by Mongol Tartar invaders, with the later walls meeting a similar fate in 1365. Stone walls were erected in the 14th century and were later remodeled during the 15th century. 12. The Walls of Troy. The walls surrounded the city and would have been over 5 meters high. The walls were made of limestone and had a series of watchtowers, brick ramparts, or elevated mounds that served as protective barriers. Archaeological evidence suggests the first Trojan walls were erected between 3000 and 2600 BC. 13. Fort Cumhalgarh's walls. Fort Cumhalgarh is an enormous Mewar fortress situated in the Aravalli Hills in the Rajsamand district of Rajasthan state in western India. It was built during the 15th century by Rana Kumbha, and it was the birthplace of the warrior king of Mewar, Maharana Pratap. The fortress and its walls are built on top of a hill 1,100 meters above sea level. Its frontal walls are as much as 4.5 meters thick with 7 fortified gateways. 14. The Korean Border DMZ. The Korean Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, is a border barrier that divides North from South Korea along the 38th parallel. It was constructed after an agreement between North Korea, China, and the UN in 1953. The barrier stretches for 250 kilometers and is, on average, 4 kilometers wide along the DMZ.
Let's take a look at the types of retaining walls. Gravity retaining walls. Gravity retaining wall depends on its own weight only to resist lateral earth pressure. Generally, gravity retaining wall is massive because it requires significant gravity load to counteract horizontal soil pressure. While designing gravity retaining wall, sliding, overturning, and bearing forces shall be taken into consideration. It can be constructed from different materials such as stone, concrete, and masonry units. Crib retaining wall and gabion retaining wall are type of gravity retaining walls, being used more frequently nowadays. Cantilever retaining walls. Cantilever retaining walls are constructed of reinforced concrete. Cantilever retaining wall consists of a relatively thin stem and a base slab. The base is divided into two parts, namely the heel and toe. The heel is the part of the base under the backfill and the toe is the other part of the base. It uses much less concrete than monolithic gravity walls, but requires more design and careful construction. It can be formed on site or precast in a factory. Counterfort retaining walls. Counterfort retaining walls are same as cantilever walls, except they have thin vertical concrete webs at regular intervals along the backside of the wall, and these webs are known as counterforts. The counterforts tie the slab and base together, and the purpose of them is to reduce the bending moments and shear forces imposed on the wall by the soil. The secondary effect of these webs is to increase the weight of the wall from the added concrete. It can be precast or formed on site. Semi-gravity retaining walls. Semi-gravity retaining walls are the specialized form of gravity walls. These types of retaining walls have some tension reinforcing steel included so as to minimize the thickness of the wall without requiring extensive reinforcement. They are a blend of the cantilever wall and gravity wall designs. These walls are often constructed of reinforced concrete, unreinforced concrete, or stone masonry. The rigid gravity walls develop their soil retaining capacity from their dead weights. The semi-gravity walls, such as cast-in-place concrete cantilever walls, develop resistance to overturning and sliding from self-weight and weight of soil above the wall footing. Prefabricated modular gravity walls. These walls include crib walls, bin walls, and gabion walls. A crib wall, concrete or timber, is a gravity-retaining structure that consists of interlocking concrete or timber elements. Each crib unit is filled with compacted granular soil. A bin wall, concrete or metal, is constructed of adjoining closed-face or open-face bins. Each bin unit is filled with compacted granular soil. Gabion walls consist of baskets made of galvanized steel mesh or PVC-coated wire mesh. The baskets are filled with durable rock ranging in size from 4 to 8 inches. Non-gravity cantilevered walls. These types of retaining walls develop lateral resistance through the embedment of vertical wall elements and support retained soil with wall-facing elements. Vertical wall elements are normally extended deep in the ground to provide lateral and vertical support. The vertical wall elements can be piles, drilled shafts, steel sheet piles, etc. Wall faces can be reinforced concrete, metal, or timber. Anchored walls. For the construction of high retaining walls, deep cable rods or wires are driven deep sideways into the earth, then the ends are filled with concrete to provide an anchor. These are also known as tiebacks. These types of retaining walls typically consist of the same elements as the non-gravity cantilevered walls but derive additional lateral resistance from one or more tiers of anchors. The anchored walls are typically used in the cut situation, in which the construction proceeds from the top to the base of the wall. Mechanically stabilized earth walls, known as MSE walls. These types of retaining walls normally include a facing element and a reinforcement element embedded in the backfill behind the facing. The facing element can be concrete, segmental block, or panel, or steel wire mesh. The reinforcement element can be either synthetic, geotextile, geogrid, or metallic strip, grid, or wire mesh. These types of retaining walls are often used to support fills and when substantial total and differential settlement are anticipated. Most of the MSE walls are proprietary, and a list of pre-approved MSE walls for use can be obtained from the geotechnical engineer. Hybrid systems. Retaining walls that use both mass and reinforcement for stability are termed as composite retaining wall or hybrid systems. Piled retaining wall. Pile retaining walls are constructed by driving reinforced concrete piles near to each other. Piles are forced into a depth that is satisfactory to counter the force which tries to push over the wall. It is employed in both permanent and temporary works. These types of retaining walls give high stiffness retaining component which are capable to hold lateral pressure in large excavation depths with nearly no disturbance to surrounding structures or properties. Sheet pile walls are built using steel sheets into a slope or excavations up to a required depth, but it cannot resist very high pressure. Sheet pile retaining walls are economical up to height 6 meters.
So folks, that's all. This video talks only about types of retaining walls. Stay tuned for more informative videos. Thank you for your love and support. Take care and God bless.